Hey everyone, and welcome to another film review for the Modernist Guide. This time it is The French Dispatch by Wes Anderson. Oh, Wes. Wes Anderson has once again Wes Andered himself a film, the most Wes Anderson he'd ever Wes Anderson before. I should redo that, but I'm not going to. Wes Anderson has Wes Anderson. That's the point. If you have seen Grand Budapest Hotel, if you have seen The Life Aquatic, Rushmore, Royal Tenenbaums, Moonrise Kingdom, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Isle of Dogs, it doesn't matter. This dude loves a very specific, thick, beautiful color palette. All the melancholic whimsy you could possibly muster, where it doesn't matter if you're really sad or really happy or both at the same time, because that's just the world we live in. Smile while you're dead inside, or frown even though you're having a good day. French Dispatch, though, while definitely not my favorite Wes Anderson, and maybe not his best work, even though he keeps piling the isms of his career on top over and over. This is his 10th film, and it's very clear since 4 films ago he knows exactly what he wants, but he keeps figuring out new ways to add more layers. The French Dispatch is a lifestyle column magazine about a French town called Ennui. If you know anything about Wes Anderson, you get the joke, and it's pretty hilarious on its own there. He's self-aware at this point. But the columns and the stories about the town are printed in a middle America, Kansas town called Liberty, Kansas. So I don't know if they're just like political or social sister cities. It explains at the beginning. I can't remember. It's, that beautiful large words, convoluted, fast speaking narrative that Wes is just super famous for at this point. And that explains it. So the creator of the French Dispatch magazine or journalist article thing just loves the town of Ennui, and so he brings its stories to the people of Liberty, Kansas. And everyone who's ever worked with Wes is in this, along with some new faces. And I could go on and on. Bill Murray is the owner of the magazine, and you can just look at all the people. There's so many. It's an anthology, though. There are 5 parts, technically. What goes on in the printing office as they try to write and create the stories, and then 4 short stories. The first one, shortest, Owen Wilson is describing the town of Ennui, and it is such a like 60s, 70s sci-fi dystopian type like styling and color palette throughout. Just it reminds me of like the mute color and then sudden brightness used in Negative Space and in contrasting of like Space Odyssey and the Andromeda Strand, and more recently Black Rainbow. You just look up those things and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. It's amazing. I never really looked at it before, but it's almost that like huge color and then also white and black in certain spaces kind of dystopian feel. The newest trick, though, he adds is a lot more just random, perfectly pointed out abuses of black and white to like tell of certain stories, but then bring in color suddenly. A lot of dual side screening where the black and white story being told and then something very important is shown to us in color, which is really amazing. The second story, which is my favorite, is about Benicio del Toro's character, who is a criminally insane death row inmate who paints these amazing modernist abstract nudes. Like, it's supposed to be of nude women, but it's just this very pretty swirly mess, but it's still abstract modernism. But it is my favorite. It does something really amazing. If you want to skip ahead and not be spoiled by this stupid funny trick that shows time passing and aging in a way I've never seen before, and you want to experience it for yourself first, then skip ahead a little bit. Benicio del Toro's character, Moses Rosenthaler, like I said, is in prison, but he's this amazing painter. They talk about his backstory, how privileged he was and stuff, and he is portrayed by Tony Revolori, who got his big break in Budapest Hotel and started being Flash Thompson in the MCU. I really like him and I want more stuff from him for sure. But he's a young Benicio del Toro basically, and by the time he gets to prison and he's sitting in his cell, he's standing there, and on screen Benicio del Toro walks in, they look at each other, Tony stands up, they like pat each other on the shoulder, Tony leaves, Benicio sits down and says 11 years later. They literally, in front of us, tagged each other in and out to show the change of time. And it's hilarious because you can see it as a meta thing, but also this really obnoxious, super, very Wes Anderson idea of watching your young self leave or you watching your old self arrive kind of thing. And I love it. And it's... can't not laugh at the absurd, sassy brilliance of it. The third story stars Frances McDormand and Timothée Chalamet, who's having a hell of a year right now. And he really fits in. Like, it almost seems like he probably ran up to Wes and was like, please, I can do exactly all this stuff. This is what I want to do. Please, 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 please. I am clearly a slightly prettier young Jason Schwartzman. Or like a weird fusion of Jason Schwartzman and Michael Cera. Like all the good parts, maybe. But it's about like a French student revolution with like chess and silly young college kid philosophy. And Frances McDormand's character is a journalist who's just there to write about the young people revolution. But she gets involved-ish and she can't help herself. And it's just that story. And it's really good. And it's poignant, but it ends with just like kind of Wes's bread and butter about young love. That's just what Wes has to do all the time, the best he can, and it works. The fourth and final story sees Jeffrey Wright join the cast as well. I don't think he's ever been in a Wes Anderson film. It feels like Wes's first black character. I hate saying that, but at least he has had other actors and characters of color, but I think he's the first one that's so prominent. And he does great. It's perfect. Jeffrey Wright, it just keeps getting added to more and more things as well, and I enjoy how good he is because he's just so good. And he does a lot of work on this one. I think out of all the narrators, which is him, Frances McDormand, Tilda Swinton, and Owen Wilson, he does the absolute best. And he's just having like dinner with the town's police commissioner, and the commissioner's son gets kidnapped, and it's just this silly tale about getting the kid back, but it's supposed to be, he's the food critic columnist, so he's supposed to be talking about the amazing award-winning chef who prepares the meals for the commissioner, but it didn't end that way. And he still talks about the food, but the joke is, it's like, look, I was going to talk about just the food, but clearly all this happened during it, so I have to tell the whole story. And I think that's pretty good. It's hard to explain exactly like what this is beyond layers and layers of Wes Anderson on top of Wes Anderson. Again, earlier I talked about it, like this is a movie about a magazine editorial on one town about another town. But then at one point, part of the exposition is explained through a stage play. There is a cartoon chase sequence at the end, probably for budget, but it's animated in the traditional French comic style. Like, it's so interesting and strange and really smart, just constantly abusing and manipulating all concepts of visual media together, like the way it does. And it's absolutely, you get what you come for, Wes Anderson, but it's also Wes Anderson's greatest hits because it's an anthology. So he literally gets to tell his style of story 4 different ways while also having a prologue, epilogue about the magazine company, the publishing company. And it's 5 short Wes Anderson films in one big thing. So in a lot of ways that makes it a Wes Anderson opus for sure. I love the Grand Budapest Hotel more. I really love Fantastic Mr. Fox, unlike anything else. Life Aquatic's up there. But this is absolutely Wes Anderson. Like, oh, I get to just Wes Anderson 5 times in one go. Fuck yes. And that's all there is to it. I'm going to give this a solid, fantastical 7.5. It might be an 8. I say that a lot. Like, I always feel like I'm undermining the score. But I want to emphasize that I would say go see it as soon as possible for anything that I give a 7 or above. It's just, if anything, I give an 8.5 or a 9 or above, it's like, don't you fucking sleep on it. But it's still Wes Anderson. It's not for everybody. But if you even like one single Wes Anderson film that I named at the beginning, you'll love this, I think. It's a little over the top. It's a little convoluted. But I love ensemble pieces. I love snappy, long-winded, snarky dialogue, which is a Wes Anderson special. So you just go see it for the adorable, silly, almost carny level nonsense. But it's more shenanigans. It's just colorful shenanigans. If you like colorful, melancholic, whimsy shenanigans, you love Wes Anderson. So that's it for this one. Like, share, subscribe. Hope to see you next time, and have a good night.